Okay, great. So, welcome to Virtual Career Tuesday, and I'm Judy Stewart along with my other colleagues in the Business Career Center, and we are very happy to welcome Hubbell today. Hubbell is a Connecticut-based employer, and they are a manufacturer of electrical lighting, power, etc. They have 75 well-known brands actually all over the globe. Um, and they are anxious to chat with students at UConn. So I'm going to introduce them and just let me say just one thing is that they are really going to be focusing today on their full-time rotation program for graduating students. In the chat bar on the right, we put the link to many of their jobs that are on Handshake already. And uh, Dan from Hubbell is joining us and maybe focusing on finance. We have their HR person, Leah, broadening out a little bit. These jobs are in finance and operations and IT and human resources. So although you may hear a little bit more about finance, when you see the jobs posted, you will see that they encompass many different areas. So without further ado, Dan or Leah, do you want us, who wants to start us off today?
I'll start us off. Just give like a 5 minute overview of Hubble as
Great.
Leah pulls up the slides. So if you go to the next page, Leah, this is just kind of a snapshot of Hubble. And so we're about 5 billion of annual sales. So one of the largest companies that would be Connecticut based, so based in Shelton, Connecticut. But as you mentioned, locations all over the US as well as some global locations as well. We really play in two main segments. Our utility segment is everything associated with the transmission and distribution of electrical power primarily. We'll talk about on the next slide exactly what that means.
Yeah, they let you bring stuff now. Like I was reading the thing, like you can bring the laptop and you can bring stuff, but
Someone,
there's no outlets. You're like, what was the point?
I'm hearing some background noise.
Can everybody put themselves on mute?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we have an electrical segment that's we'll talk about on the next page as well. So starting with the utility business, easiest way to think about what we do is with the leading position of electrical components that go onto the power grid. So if you're sitting at your house and you look outside the power grid and you see, the poles and the lines, everything that's not the pole, the line, or the transformer, we make. And so you can see examples of the products here on the right and in the middle. Things like arresters, insulators, components, all the hardware and nuts and bolts that really go into making the grid function effectively and making it reliable and efficient. So our products help transmit that energy, distribute it effectively. And we've got the leading position in those businesses, right? And so we'll talk about this in a second as well, but we also have products that play in the smart grid area to help not only conduct the electricity, but also incorporate the communication and control of that electricity and help utilities to better manage the grid and do that more efficiently. And really our products are everywhere you look. And so example, I'm here in Nashville right now for an investor conference, and we're just walking outside and the utilities here are underground, and you can see our enclosures that hold a lot of these products as well. And so you're walking over Hubbell products, or if you're in an above ground utility area, you can look up and our products are always there. So if you go to the electrical page, Leah, this is our other segment. Again, a little bit less than half the business. In the middle are some of the markets that we play in. On the left are some of the business units that we have, and on the right are some of the products. And it's a broad and deep portfolio of products, relatively simple in a lot of instances. But again, I'm here in a hotel room. There's a plug and a receptacle right behind my computer. We make those. If you were to knock down the wall behind that, you'd also see a lot of our product. Electrical components, things like enclosures, things that help ground electrical products, connect it and protect it, really. So this is everything that's kind of associated with the consumption of electrical energy and how that's able to be managed effectively by owners and operators of buildings, of industrial applications, of factories, and applications like that. So if you go to the next page, Leah, this is really how it all kind of comes together. And so if you think about our portfolio, what's unique about Hubbell is we play everywhere across the energy infrastructure. And so what that means is everywhere from where energy gets generated at the generation source, that gets then transmitted. So if you think of, if you're driving along a highway, you see the big high voltage transmission lines. We make the components that go into that. Then that product gets distributed to local homes, local buildings, local factories, schools. And again, we make the products that go into that. And so then when that energy comes into a building or a factory or a home, it gets consumed. And we make the electrical applications that enable that electricity to be consumed safely and reliably. And then what really connects those two is what we call the edge, and how do those two things interact? By communicating and controlling. So that energy is getting consumed, the data is getting communicated back to the utility of how the energy is being consumed, and we make certain applications that enable them to help control the grid and make sure that it's being used reliably and efficiently. So some of the areas here of that we highlighted on the page of applications that we can do and problems we can solve for our customers. So you think about things like renewables coming onto the grid. We're able to help our utilities better integrate those through both new interconnections, but also to help better manage that two-way flow of power as renewables come on. We're protecting critical infrastructure, so you can kind of see in the news every day examples of the problems utilities are facing with things like storms, things like fires, and the need to make sure that infrastructure is properly maintained, and our products help to enable that. Energy efficiency, again, so on the electrical side of the house, our products are helping to ensure that energy is being consumed efficiently, and that we're reducing the consumption of energy in certain instances. So really there's kind of two main themes here of what our products help enable. And that's what we call grid modernization and electrification. And we'll talk about that on the next page. So grid modernization and electrification really comes down to kind of one simple construct. Really, more things are getting plugged into the grid every day. And the grid is outdated and needs to be upgraded and modernized and become smarter, right? So if you think of the biggest example would be electric vehicles, right? So over the next decade, the U.S. vehicle fleet is going to transition from combustion engine to electrical. That's obviously going to have a lot more energy consumption needs and stress onto the grid as cars get plugged in. Same thing for, say, electric heat pumps and things like that. The world is moving more electric, more renewable. And so more things are getting plugged into an infrastructure that, is old. So again, we have some stats here on the page to show that outages are increasing, utilities are facing a lot of challenges. And obviously there's more electrical applications coming out of the grid every day. And so what we do and how we're uniquely positioned is to help enable that for our customers, to help utilities upgrade the grid, to help them manage the shift to renewables, and to help provide the products that enable this electrification. I think that might be the last slide, Leah, if you click ahead. One more. So here's where we're investing, and I think there's a lot of unique opportunities across Hubbell to kind of bring together what I was just talking about. So our markets are growing fast. We've had very strong results this year, driven by kind of these trends that we just talked about. We're investing in new product development. We're investing in new sales and marketing resources. And from a finance perspective, which is mostly what we're here to talk about today, finance helps enable all of this as well on the business side. So areas like data centers, which we haven't talked about yet, that's something where if you think of big tech companies, all the data that's getting consumed out there, big tech companies are building data centers to help, store that data and help, them run their businesses more efficiently. There's a lot of electrical content that goes into those data centers. We help provide that. On the renewables front, we sell product directly into solar farms and wind farms. And then we also make the components that on the transmission lines that then take that energy and bring it to your home or your building. Utility infrastructure we talked about needs to be hardened and become more reliable. And then EVs, again, we touched on the prior page. I think there's a lot of opportunity around charging infrastructure, as well as how do you meter that, and how do utilities incorporate electric vehicles back into the grid. So that's kind of an overview of Hubbell. We're also here to talk today about the rotational program. And so we have a rotational program across Hubbell. We're looking to really kick off kind of the finance aspect of this and create a dedicated track for future finance leadership at the company. And so we're looking for a couple of full-time hires to start this year, and then we'd like to expand this program over time. But a lot of opportunities across kind of financial disciplines. And so things like financial planning and analysis, accounting, operations finance, so opportunities to work directly in our factories and help manufacture our products more efficiently. Investor relations, which is what I do, so that's about communicating our story to Wall Street and to the investors and analysts who cover us. Business development, so acquisitions are a big part of our strategy. We purchase companies, and so a lot of opportunities in that area as well. We're looking to kick off, it's basically a 3-year rotation. We're looking to do 3 one-year rotations and rotate candidates around different businesses within Hubbell, as well as some of these different disciplines. So I'll stop there, and Leah, you can fill in anything I missed, or we can turn it over to Q&A.
Yeah, I think I have just a pretty standard slide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Hubbell campus programs. So like Dan was talking about, we have our Hubbell rotational program for the finance track. But as Judy mentioned before, we do have other tracks. So we have human resources, we have engineering, we have operations, we have IT, and of course finance too. And so I definitely suggest anyone who is interested to definitely check out that link that Judy put in the chat, as well as check out our Hubbell career site. And hopefully we can get that link out too, but it's careers.hubbell.com. And so definitely check that out. We have a lot of openings on there too. With the campus programs, we have 2 parts to our campus programs. So we have, oh, thank you. I saw, Kathy, that you put it in the chat. We have 2 parts to our campus program. So we have our intern program, and then like what we were talking about, the HRP. And so with the intern program, that would be for summer 2023. And that is a 12-week program that runs from May 15th to August 4th. And that is in many different functions. However, for the Connecticut locations, we have a few on there that's not necessarily for business alone, but we do have some engineering positions. More might open up as the time goes on, but I know that we want to talk here right now mostly about the full-time positions as well as the Hubbell rotational program, just because that is positions that are currently open and that we are hiring for. But I guess I can turn it over to Judy if you have any questions for us.
I just have a couple of general questions. So
Yeah.
can you just talk about what are the skills needed and what is your interviewing process like? Timing, application, anything that you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so let me stop sharing. I don't think we need the slides up anymore. And so for our interview process, it does depend on, right now, it does depend on which function they would be interested in for the rotational program. With the rotational program, we have functional leaders who would be helping interview, and our functional leaders are across the US. And so with that, we do have those virtual interview processes. And for the Hubbell rotational program, we have 3 sets of interviews. We have one that's a primary screening with me, then we talk to an HR business partner, and then we would have a functional leadership panel. And so with that functional leadership panel, like Dan was talking about earlier, we have our 2 segments. We have our Hubbell Utility Solutions and Hubbell Electrical Solutions. And we also have what we call the 3rd segment, but not really a segment, is just our corporate area. And so we have someone from corporate, we have someone from the HUS, and we have someone from HES. And so with that, we have a broad range of different interviewers for that final interview panel. But in terms of the timing of everything, we do want to hire a good number of HRPs across the functions. And so right now we don't have a specific deadline in which you have to get in your applications. If you are a senior graduating December 2022 and want to start in the beginning of the year, then you would get something in fairly quickly, and that way we can go through that interview process. However, if you're a graduating senior for May 2023, then you have a little bit more time to be able to apply to our program. Did I answer all those questions, Judy?
Yeah, just one other thing, and I know, of course, the skills are applicable to whether you're doing finance or operations, the hard skills. Are there some soft skills or things that would make a student stand out that are important to you?
Yeah, I would love to answer this. And then Dan, I would love to hear your feedback on this one as well. But in terms of some soft skills, I definitely say raising your hand and taking initiative. I think that's going to be very, very helpful because in a rotational program, you're going to be meeting with many different managers. You're going to be working on a variety of different projects, meeting people. This is a fantastic opportunity to be able to raise your hand to get more involved into Hubbell and more involved into different areas and different projects. And so I think definitely a go-getter and someone who's willing to take initiative on certain projects in order to build their network during this time and during this rotational program. But Dan, I'd also love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, just add to, I mean, again, on the speaking on the finance side, and so we'd primarily be looking for like finance and accounting majors, I think, but open to a broad range on the background side. I'd say again, I think there's a lot of routes a senior finance student might be looking to take now. For us, I think somebody who's wants to go work at a company and get broad exposure across finance is something that's important. You know, and we are a manufacturing company. I think somebody who is interested in the spaces that we play in, you know, on the infrastructure side, electrical equipment and things like that. And so somebody who's willing to work at a manufacturing company, someone who's willing to, you know, potentially relocate for the right opportunity that makes sense, I think is something that could be attractive to the right candidate and could be attractive to us to get broader exposure across all of Hubbell.
Right. I think that there was a question. Saif, do you want to go ahead and ask the question you put in chat?
I think in between those, maybe that.
Sure. You guys asked about renewable energy. I mean, talked about renewable energy earlier in the presentation, and I just wanted to ask how will the shift of going from traditional sources of energy to renewable affect Hubble in the long run, especially because, like, I know I'm sure poles, like energy poles, will probably go out of service.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for us is the short answer. So we don't think the grid will be fundamentally transformed, but we still think the broader infrastructure that's in place now is just going to need to be upgraded and modernized, right? And so there's always going to kind of be an electrical grid. There's distributed resources. So there's 2 ways to look at it. One is utility scale renewable generation. Those are utilities building a, say, big solar farm out in the middle of nowhere. That creates opportunity for our business to sell product into that and to help enable the transmission back to neighborhoods. For distributed solar, so if you're thinking like a rooftop solar for a home or a building, we also sell into those markets, but generally those also get connected back into the grid. You know, there's certain instances where you can go completely off grid, but those are relatively isolated. And I think people are going to want sources of backup in terms of the overall grid. And what that does is when you have now two-way flow of energy, so if you've got a rooftop solar panel that's now sending energy back onto the grid, that creates a lot of stress for utilities and creates the need for new product to help harden the infrastructure, but also to help utilities better control that energy and communicate back and forth as to what's going on the grid and how to better control it. And so it creates a significant opportunity for Hubbell.
So are you saying that you guys are going to shift towards using solar panels as well?
No, we don't make the panels, but if you think of a panel going on a rooftop, that needs to be grounded, say, and there's wires that go through that that need to be managed. So we make the wiring devices that help enable that. We make the grounding devices that help ground that current, and then we make the connectors that help connect that solar energy back into the grid.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
good,
you.
thanks. Mary Kerrigan, I think you have a question, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I have one for Leah, concerning HR. So with candidates looking to get into HR, what are like the strong qualities you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with HR, just like any other area, like I mentioned before, definitely someone who is willing to ask questions and be able to raise their hand. But specifically with HR, I think that this might sound a little basic, but just being able to work with people and being willing to work with people. I think that a lot of people have they might have a strength in working with Excel or working with numbers. And although you do have to use those in HR, just being willing to get into different areas. And I think also something that would be helpful is just to take a look at the different areas in HR too. If you're interested in going into the HR area, is looking at the different areas, because it's not just, a lot of people think that it might be conflict resolution. However, there's so many different areas of HR to get into. And so going into that a little bit, there's benefits, there's compensation, there's talent, inclusion and diversity, communications, going into the talent with recruiting and a lot of the backside of HR, so all the HR systems that go into it. So there's actually a lot of different areas of HR that many people don't know. And I think something that would help candidates stand out is knowing some of the differences between them and also being open to learning them as well. And I think in terms of soft skills, there's not necessarily a soft skill that will stand out compared to other different functional areas, just because a lot of the soft skills have to do with communication, being able to work with people, things like that. That is pretty standard. But in terms of kind of setting yourself apart, is being able to potentially take classes that are in human resources or that relate to it, or even organizational behavior. And I think there's also another one of industrial psychology too, that all relate to human interaction in the workplace. And so those are all interesting areas.
One thing I'd add too, and this goes for really any function, HR, finance, you listed a couple at the beginning of this too. The key, I think, for all these is, I think, business partnership, right? And so if you're in a function within Hubbell or any company, you're not just doing your function, you're a partner to the actual businesses. And so we talked about some of the Hubbell businesses there as well. And so what that means is knowing the products, knowing the strategy, knowing the competitive landscape, and being able to figure out how to best partner with the people running the business in order to help them succeed and help Hubbell, execute on its strategy, right? And so on the HR side, there's a couple examples, and the slide we ended on of strategic growth verticals is a great one of newer areas that we're going into and investing in strategically as a company. And so from an HR perspective, what that's meant for that organization is thinking differently about how we attract talent to the organization, thinking differently about how we compensate that talent, and just figuring out more unique ways to get talent into the organization and to keep them. And so just that business partnership is probably the biggest thing that I would highlight.
Right. There's another question. Are the HR positions rotational as well? The three-year
Yes.
rotational program?
Yes, so we do have that. We actually have a employee in that rotational program right now. So right now she's on the talent inclusions and communications team. And the next rotation, she might be able to rotate into an HRBP area, or she might rotate into our total rewards section. And so, or Center of Excellence for HR. So that's a lot of different opportunities that you can go into in our rotational program. We also do have HR internships, so I'm not sure if you were a senior looking for a full-time position or if you were just interested in the internship as well, but those are different opportunities that we have for HR. So yes, we do have one of the rotational positions available, and we are looking for multiple candidates for it.
Right. And the various areas that you talked about, do you have, like, you have a lot more in finance or IT, or is it about this? You don't have to quote the actual numbers, but you know, which is your biggest area that you're looking for, or I'm not as articulate as I should be, but if you
No,
can
we
answer
get it.
that.
I think the different tracks are at varying stages, and Leah can help fill in the gaps. But I'd say from an engineering and operations perspective, is probably the most mature. We've
Mhm.
had that program in place for a long time, and so there's say engineers who are working in the factories and helping design products, right? And so we've had that for a while. Leah said there's a rotational associate in HR now, and so I think looking to grow that. Finance, we've never had something like this, and so this will be the first iteration. And again, we're looking for at least a handful, say 4 to 5 to start next year, and then the idea would be to grow that significantly over time as we scale up the program.
Right. Okay,
I don't
good.
know, Leah, if you fill in any other details there.
That's
No,
good.
I think that's good. We are really trying to grow this program. So we've had a rotational program in the past. So a few years ago, that was to one of our business units. However, this is something, so that was called the GRP, so the Graduate Rotation Program. However, now we've grown into an enterprise-wide rotational program that we call the Hubbell Rotational Program, which is what we are talking about. And so with the Hubbell Rotational Program, across all the functions, we really want to see it grow, and we want to continually add more people. So right now we have 10 people across the different functions who are currently a part of our program, and we want to get that number next year even up to 30 and continue to keep growing throughout the year. So this is something that has recently started, and we want to see recently started as an enterprise, and we want to continue to see growing. So I wouldn't say that we necessarily have any caps on certain functions, or we don't necessarily have one that needs to hire a lot more than others. Overall, as a program, each function does want to grow even more and receive more candidates to be able to offer full time.
Right. I think Kathy, do you have a question?
Yeah, so it might be for Leah. So if a candidate's interviewing, how do they build up enough knowledge of the industry? Because it's pretty technical to be able to interview and show that they've done their research, they have a basic understanding of the company.
Yeah, so I think actually today, if anybody's watching the YouTube after, I think that would be a really great place to start, because Dan did a really great job in just breaking down the different areas that Hubbell is in. And Hubbell's just a very unique company too, because Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard, we don't have a competitor who is exactly like us. We have different competitors in different areas, but not one that is exactly like us. And that definitely puts us in a differentiated position. And so with that, it is challenging to know more about our company by just looking at the industry and as a whole, just because we're across a lot of different industries, in my opinion. But again, Dan, stop me if I'm if I'm wrong in that.
It's a good point. And again, the slides we showed you this morning or this afternoon, sorry, I've been traveling, are taken from our investor day, which we do every 2 years. And so if you wanted to do more research, you can go on to both our general website, Hubbell.com, and poke around, and you can poke into any of the businesses, any of the markets that we play in, check out the products. But there's also an investor website within that. It's investors.hubbell.com. And that bigger presentation, which is I think 100 slides, is embedded within there. And so that would give you a lot more granularity on some of the things that we talked about as well, particularly from a financial perspective. And so that'd be a good place to start. I think that the general website and the investor day presentation.
Yeah, and another note I just want to make is I think another great area to start would be our LinkedIn page too. So something that our talent acquisition team has released is I believe it's called the Life page for Hubbell on LinkedIn. So just checking that out, seeing the different areas of our company, and just showing the just the action of looking into those things. And I know when I was looking at Hubbell, and just a little bit about me, I was an intern at Hubbell in 2020 and then was able to be hired full time. And so when I was looking at Hubbell in the first place, I was able to see the internship on LinkedIn, be able to take a look at it, and I reached out to previous alumni at my school to find out more about the company. And so I would recommend any students to be able to reach out to any alumni if they feel comfortable doing that, to make those connections. But not just that, is going on the company website, seeing what Hubbell is all about in terms of their culture. And so being able, I obviously we can speak to the culture here too, but just kind of going that extra mile and being able to look up Hubbell and the culture of the company, because I think it's one thing to know about the industry, but there's another thing to know about the culture, because ultimately you're going to be spending a lot of time at the organization. And so knowing the culture and being able to connect with somebody who already works at the company to create that connection, to create that network, and be able to get to know Hubbell even better would be a really, really great start that candidates could also talk about in an interview process.
I was going to ask Dan and Leah as well, as far as market segmentation goes for Hubbell too, as who do you guys mainly also work with it or deal with it? Is it industrial firms like CED, Granger, EW, or are you directly working with source providers like Eversource, CNG, Avangrid, as far as the
Great
customer
question.
base goes?
Great question. It's actually both. So about 70% of our sales go through the big industrial distributors. You named a couple of them, and there are others as well that we'd name there. But also on the utility side of our business, that relationship is also direct with the utilities. And so in a lot of instances, it's just easier to fulfill through an industrial distributor because they've got such a broad footprint. But yes, our relationship with all those big utilities is direct. And I think what's really unique about our business and our position is our products really represent a very small percentage of the utilities cost to construct or maintain a mile of the grid, but it's absolutely essential and critical to the functioning of the grid. So if one of our products goes out, if an arrestor or an insulator fails, that leads to an outage, which for the utilities is a big deal and obviously something that they want to avoid. So we've got a really nice position there where we're critical to our customers and can really differentiate on quality, reliability, and service. So we have direct relationships with all those large utilities and are selling them critical products.
That's fantastic. That also means job security in many ways as well, because you guys are so dependent in the sense, a lot of firms depend on your materials, which is great. And
Yeah.
that really is a niche and differentiates you in the market. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and if you look at the financials for this year, it's been really strong, and it's driven by the trends we talked about. Utilities need to invest to upgrade the grid, and again, if you read the news, you can see all the challenges that
Oh,
we're facing
absolutely.
with an older grid, with weather events, with renewables coming on, and with more things getting plugged into it. It's kind of a perfect storm of challenges for utilities, and Hubbell's well positioned to help them solve those problems. So that's
Which
leading
is
to a lot
great.
of growth
This
and
is
a
why
lot
it
of
makes
investment.
sense to join such a great company like Hubbell, where you're going to really differentiate yourself in the market and join a leading industry firm that's going to support that infrastructure and that highway. That's fantastic.
Yep.
So for the students who are with us now or will watch later on YouTube, I just want to remind you, we put the link for Hubbell, we put the link for LinkedIn for Hubbell. So certainly follow that. And I just did a quick search. We have about 45 at a minimum alumni, UConn alumni that work at Hubbell. Very easy to find. So good people. Oh, Dan, you're an alumni?
2009, yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, hooray. I didn't know that. Anyway, so excellent. But besides Dan, there's other alumni. So connect with them, ask them questions, see if you can connect with them on a phone call. And that's always a great way. And Leah's in Human Resources, maybe they have an employee referral program, which is always a wonderful way to get into a company as well. So I want to be respectful of time. Does anybody else have any burning questions right this minute that they want to ask? No? Okay, great. Well, Dan and Leah, thank you for joining us today. And this will be by the end of the week on YouTube, so others can watch it as well. And if anybody else, Saif has a question. Dan, why is there still light out where you are?
I think it's my lamp on my hotel lobby, but I am a time zone behind. I'm in Nashville right now. So
Oh, okay. That's what we thought. Either that or you
yeah,
had the greatest ring light in the world.
no,
Anyway,
it's good
so
electrical products.
thanks again. If anybody else has any questions, you can reach out to Dan or to it's Leah Thompson. And Dan, what is your last name again?
Inamorado.
Inamorado. Okay.
I'll throw it in the chat. I thought I put it on my thing.
Okay, I'm sorry. We should have done that.
No, my
Oh, there you go. Oh, wow, that was
yeah.
quick. Excellent. And Leah Thompson. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening. And I hope that the students that are on now or will join after will apply, because this is a great company with a great rotation program. So thanks again and have a good evening, okay? Okay.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, okay. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.